about that song. Gets me every single time. Good morning, Celebration Spiritual Center. Good morning. How's everybody doing?
Great.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. So, this is the first Sunday of November, which means we have a new series, All Is Well. And I heard some reactions just when we were reading the description of the series, and so I believe that it's going to be a powerful series. And what we're going to do, we're going to take this beautiful affirmation, all is well. We hear many people say it all the time. I know many times if I email someone, I'll say, hey Roy, how are you? I pray all is well. We want to ensure that all is well in our lives and with the people that we love. And so what we're going to do this month, we're going to go through each week, we're going to look at that phrase, all is well, from different sides. And so this week, we're talking about living from all is well. Next week, we'll talk about praying from all is well. The following week, after Thanksgiving, we'll talk about giving from all is well. And then we're going to end with loving from all is well. We're going to deal with relationships, which will be fun. So when I began to think about living from all is well and what that really means, for me, it immediately took me to a story in the Bible with Jesus and the stilling of the storm, where he says, peace be still. There was a storm and the disciples were scared. And he's at the bottom of the boat asleep. He comes up, he says, peace be still, and the storm stops. I thought about that because for me, that's a story that helps to crystallize how do we live from all is well. Because I don't know about you, but there's storms taking place in my life all the time. Something that we would call a problem, a challenge, a difficulty, an experience, an argument, a conflict, a job loss, whatever it may be. These are the storms in our lives. And so I thought about that story. I said, okay, well, if we're talking about living from all is well, we've got to use that story. But as I thought about the idea of a storm, it then took me to hurricanes. One thing that I find incredibly interesting about hurricanes is that for all the damage that hurricanes do, the middle of the storm, there is absolute peace. And so if you don't know about hurricanes, just a quick bit of information. It says here that the skies are often clear above the eye and winds are relatively light. It is actually the calmest section of the hurricane. The force deflects the wind slightly away from the center, causing the wind to rotate around the center of the hurricane, the eye wall, leaving the exact center of the eye perfectly calm. And when I think about that, and I think about the story of the stilling of the storm, I'm reminded that what we're being called to do, if we're talking about living from all is well, is to actually be like the eye of the storm. Because there will always be, as long as you're here on this earth, you will have problems. You will have challenges. You will have difficulties. You will have upsets and hurts. Things will always take place in this realm. That is true. But the idea of living from all is well is how do we hold that peace in the midst of the storm? How do we recognize and remember that we are the peace in the middle of the storm? And so that's where the topic of this message comes from, the eye of the storm. That living from all is well requires us to be like that eye, which is perfectly calm, the exact center, although the winds are raging and the rains and all sorts of damage and destruction is taking place. And the other thing, as I thought about that, I wasn't really aware of it at the time, but this idea of hurricanes, and this idea of storms and being the peace in the storm. And we've just, this past week, recognized the 1-year anniversary of the superstorm, Hurricane Sandy, which took lives and destroyed homes. And so we're in this place, we know in this area what a hurricane does. Most of us, when I was in Florida for 2 summers, I experienced hurricanes working for Disney. But normally, for those of us in the Northeast, we never experienced that. But here today, we know what that means and what that is. And so we're going to use that. We're going to use that experience to talk about being the eye of the storm and living from all is well. And so what I began to recognize is that if we want to live from all is well, from this idea, not to just make it some sentimental, sweet words that we say, some spiritual, churchy words that sound good, right? That sound religious, or we sound like we're awakened. We want to begin to live from it. And what I recognize is that in order to live from all is well, it requires us to develop a certain sense or a certain awareness or a certain spiritual worldview. And so I have 3 points here that in order for us to live from all is well, there are 3 things we need to recognize. 1, that peace is ever present. 2, we must recognize that I create my life. And 3, we must always keep in mind that it's all for our good. So number 1, peace is ever present. Now we've heard many over time, regardless of your experience, we've heard many phrases and many scriptures that talk about peace. I was reminded of Philippians 4:7, that the peace of God is that peace that transcends all understanding, the peace that passes all understanding. There's something that's remarkable to me about peace, true peace. It transcends our understanding. And what does that mean? Our understanding of what takes place in this physical world. Because when we're requiring peace, when we need peace, it's something that's not present here, right here and now. Otherwise, we would reach out and grab it. And so the peace of God is something that takes us outside of our current circumstances, right? And then as I begin to understand and think about this idea of peace being ever present, we talked about, I mentioned the story earlier about the stilling of the storm, and I want to share what that story is really all about. We find it in the scriptures in Matthew, Mark, and John. And I want to use the version that is in Mark, because I think it just tells the story a little better. I want to share this with you, and then there's a brilliant insight in here. So, it goes like this. On that day, when evening had come, he, Jesus, said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in a boat, just as he was. And other boats were with him. And a great storm of wind arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said, "Teacher, do you not care if we perish?" And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. He said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you no faith?" And they were filled with awe and said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" So there's 2 things here in the story that I want to point out. One, we actually see in this very short story 2 approaches to life. We can approach the storm with fear, or we can approach the storm with faith. So the disciples, of course, obviously were approaching it with fear. "Teacher, do you care? Do you not care if we perish? Do you want us to die? What's wrong with you? You know, the winds and the rains are raging, and our boat is even filling up with water. How can you sleep on the cushion in the stern?" They were afraid. But Jesus, in this story, wakes up and speaks to the wind. "Peace, be still." And everything became calm. Now, what I recognize about that is he understood that peace was ever present. What's interesting to me, even about the statement that is used here, often I've heard the story a zillion times growing up and studying in seminary, but I always read it as one phrase, "Peace, be still." But that's not the way it's written. It's written, "Peace!" exclamation point. "Be still!" exclamation point. And when I begin to see, it's almost like if we have a child that we need him to be still, right? We don't say, "Peace, be still." "Peace, sit down." Right? That's the way. And that is the confidence and the faith at which he was speaking to that storm, recognizing that peace is ever present. So by speaking that word, invoking peace into the circumstance or situation, "Peace, be still." This is how we must begin to speak to our challenges and our difficulties as we are living in all this well, right? Because the challenges are there. If we're the eye of the storm, we recognize that we're the point of calm. And from our point of calm, we say, "Peace!" exclamation point. "Be still!" exclamation point. We command the winds and the waves to be still. And so we recognize that peace is ever present, and we move forward. Because living from all is well also requires something else very profound. It requires us to remember and recognize that we create our life. Can you just say that for a second? I create my life. Just say that.
I create my life.
You may have never said that before, so say it again. I create my life.
I create my life.
When we recognize that we're living from all is well, first we say, wait, peace is ever present. Peace is ever present. And so because peace is ever present, I now speak peace over my conditions. Peace, be still. But then I recognize I create my life. Why is this good news? It is good news because it takes you out of being a victim and it takes you out of being powerless.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It also means that everything that has been created can be uncreated or transmuted. Oh my God. And it then brings us back to choice. Of Course in Miracles says something beautiful about this choice. It says that the truth is that you are responsible for what you think, because it is only at this level that you can exercise choice. See, this is why it's important that we recognize that we create our life, because if we create our life, then we can choose the circumstances of our life. Whatever happens. So yes, in this moment, I may have created a breakup. And this feels like the most excruciating pain I've ever felt. But if I recognize that I created it, that means that I now have the possibility and the opportunity to now speak a different word, to choose something different in my life. So maybe this breakup, there was something about this relationship that really wasn't in alignment with who and what we are as children of God, as those that, as God has created. So now I have an opportunity to choose a new experience with my next mate. And so we can talk about, we can use tools. You can literally write out the vision that you wanna have in that next relationship, because you create your life. Can you say it again? I create my life.
I create my life.
Whatever the vision is. And so maybe you're in your job and you're having an experience where someone was promoted over you and you're feeling some kind of way about it. But then you remember, first I speak peace because I'm the eye of the storm. And then you say, I create my life. And so then you get full of the feeling of what your perfect job looks like, what your perfect opportunity looks like, right? Maybe that situation was an opportunity for and inviting you to look at, maybe it was time to leave that company, maybe it was time to leave that position, maybe actually it was never your passion anyway, and you were just wasting time in what Stephen Pressfield calls a shadow career. And so maybe it was time for you actually to begin to look at your vision and your purpose and the things that you really love and the things that you set aside. But you create your life. And the power of that is when you have choice. You don't have to just stay in the boat and die. You can speak to the winds and the waves or get out if you want to. But you have choice. You're not a victim. You have power. And more importantly, you can uncreate or transmute any experience. I gotta stay here for a second. When we talk about uncreating something or transmuting something, what we're talking about, first we have to understand that everything is energy. Science teaches us and metaphysics teaches us that nothing can be created or destroyed. It can only be changed or transmuted. It's the way everything works. Science even teaches us, which is powerful, that every word that has been spoken is here. So every great master, every great teacher, it's here in the atmosphere. Literally, the molecules that exited Buddha's mouth, the molecules that have exited Jesus' mouth, all the great teachers, whoever you want to think about, they're here, operating in the universe. And so we can even use that power, that energy, and transmute it and change it for whatever we want it to be. So that's why we say, again, this idea of I create my life, or that we can transmute it, because we recognize that energy is not created or destroyed, it's only changed. Every experience in your life is energy. It doesn't mean you're wrong or you did something wrong or there's something wrong with Sally or something wrong with Johnny. It doesn't mean any of that. It's just energy. It's an experience. And thank God, because we can change it based on that. If it was solid, if it was, fixed, we wouldn't be able to do anything about it. But it can be changed. And so my third point, which is always my favorite point, the third point, it's all for my good. Yesterday on Instagram, I saw a image that someone posted, and it said, train your mind to only see good in every situation. Powerful. Because what I recognize is that this is, as metaphysicians, as spiritual people, as powerful human beings, God beings, created in the likeness and image of God, we're being asked constantly to begin to see our life from that place of good, to put on a pair of glasses and see good. Because there's always good in every situation. I'm reminded of the story of Joseph, which I shared some months back. Powerful story, one of my favorite stories. And after all that he experienced, brothers who threw him into slavery, he says, even though you intended to do harm to me, God intended it for good. He understood that. And so he could forgive his brothers. He was fine with that. And then we hear also in Scripture in Romans, we know that all things work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. We've heard these scriptures or heard these quotes used in different ways. And it's important to continue to remind ourselves of that. Again, as we're in the experience, first recognizing that as I live from all is well, peace is ever present. And so first I speak peace to my life. As I speak peace to my life, I speak peace over myself. Bring my blood pressure down because there may be something going on, right? So I speak peace, be still. And then I begin to remember, well, right, as I'm still, I remember that I'm actually powerful, that I create my life and I have choice, always. You're never backed up against a wall, in truth, even when it feels like that. You always have choice to do something that you decide to do, right? You're not forced to do anything. It's that idea of responding versus reacting. You always have choice. And then we move forward and we say that it's all for my good. Now, this all sounds wonderful, right? Sounds good. Peace is ever present. I create my life. It's all for my good. But how does that work in real life, right? Living from all is well. How does it work? And as I was preparing this message, I thought about that. I said, okay, Greg, how does it work for real? And my mind was immediately taken back to 10 years ago. At the time, I was doing some IT consulting. I was working for Wired magazine. It was a cool position. I had started there in April of 2003, and we're in December of 2003. And the publisher of Wired comes into my office and he says, Greg, we really love the work you've been doing, but unfortunately, we're not going to be able to keep you on as a consultant. And I said, okay, thank you. Now, the backdrop of that, of course, is I don't know where my next, job is going to come from, where my next consulting gig is coming from. At the time, I was married. My daughter was 2 years old, and I was actually working full time. Erica was only working part time. So all of these things are real and true. But in that moment, I just said, okay, thank you. Now, what I found out in subsequent days is that there was someone from the California office that was moving to New York who had a relationship with the higher ups, and they wanted to give him my position. And because I was a consultant, right, I wasn't staff, they could just let me go at any time they want. So this is now it's a story. Now it's they want to put somebody in my place and take money from me, take money from my family. Right? So it was interesting. I didn't get mad. The people that told me this wanted me to get mad. I didn't get mad. And so when my last day came, one of the way it was set up with Wired had their own IT division because it was a computer-related, technology-related magazine. But Condé Nast, the larger parent company, had its own IT staff. And I had developed relationships with them because we had to work together. And so I said, let me just go and say goodbye to those folks, the managers down there, it's been a good time. I went down to say goodbye. Hey, y'all, it's my last day. I just want to, say it's been great working with you. I appreciate, the help that you've given me. They didn't know I was leaving. They were like, wait, what's going on? And they were really shocked and they were upset. And again, they found out the story. And they wanted me to be upset. And I said, it's fine, it's all good. It's all for my good. And by the end of the day, I got a call where they said, come here on Monday. You can work with us. I'm like, okay. It was December, it was Christmas coming, all of that, right? I'm like, wow, okay. And what ended up happening, I worked that month in December, and then in January. So first of all, let's back up, because we got to realize what's happening. There's miracles and blessings happening right there. I never lost any money, ever. At that time, I was only working 4 days a week. This shifted me to 5 days a week at a higher rate. So now, actually, them firing me based on some relationship and moving me out of the way. Again, I could tell that story if I want. Actually gave me more money, right? So I worked the rest of December, got to January, and a full-time position opened up, and I was the perfect candidate for it. Now, there were other people, other consultants that had been in the IT department for years, still hoping to get a full-time position. But this position was there waiting for me, and I was literally the perfect candidate based on all of my skills to work with the New Yorker. And so out of the blue, they say, hey Greg, can we talk? There's a position opening up. We know you would be perfect for it. It's actually similar to what you were doing with Wired. We need somebody that we trust that can work with this magazine. And I said, cool. So now I have a full-time job with full benefits, vacation, more money, because they fired me. Right? But what I did, what did I stand in? I never got angry. I didn't go to that place. I knew, I understood it. I don't know why I understood it, but I remember it kind of being a transcendent moment where it was just like, peace fell over me. And I'm like, there's something here. And I held that peace. I never stirred up a storm because, I'm sure I could have filed a lawsuit. I could have, gathered data. I'm in IT. I could access emails. I could do all of those things, right? To build my case and build my story and spend months or years in litigation, and then I would have never had that position. This is what living from all is well actually looks like. So when I talk about it from this place, I'm not talking about some theoretical point of view, some theoretical spiritual idea that sounds nice, but what happens on the ground? What I recognize is that it's always for your good. Even when somebody fires you, or as Joseph says in Genesis, you intended to do me harm. I mean, that's what's powerful about it. They literally intended to do me harm. But it doesn't matter. It does not matter because it's all for my good. Even the so-called harm. In the story of Joseph, yes, they threw him into slavery. They were jealous of him. And that actually sent him to the place of being Pharaoh's second in command. It's all for your good. You create your life. Peace is ever present. This is what we must begin to understand as we talk about living from all is well. I invite everybody to stand in this moment. So we're taking a deep dive into this idea of all is well. Today it's about how do we live from all is well. And so I encourage you, things will show up this week. First, to remember that peace is ever present. If you don't remember anything else, I guarantee, just speak peace, exclamation point. Be still over the circumstances. It might just be over yourself, to calm yourself down. Because once we calm ourselves down and get back to that center, then we begin to see clearly. Then we begin to recognize the next point, that I create my life, that I am actually powerful. I can change any situation, circumstance, or experience based on my choice. And you have tools. The tool I love and is coming to me in this moment, you write out your vision. And write it from a place of passion. Write it from a place of excitement, a place of feeling. That's the place you must write it from, not from this place of, oh, it would be nice if. No, that thing that you want that gets you stirred up. And watch your life begin to form itself around your words. Watch life begin to form itself around your ideas. Watch life begin to form itself around your desires. And then underneath it all, as you have written that vision, and you've released it to the universe, you know that it's all working for your good. So even as you write that vision out, and if you're fired, if a breakup does occur, if something that seems wrong occurs, you recognize that something about this is going to move me into a greater position. Something about this is going to move me into exactly where I want to be. So I surrender to it. I allow it. I don't judge it. I don't call it wrong. I don't call it bad. I actually call it good. Because I know that good and only good is what God desires for me. So, Mother, Father, God, in this moment, I speak a word of courage and a word of blessing over each and every person in this room and each and every person that will hear this message. Because I recognize that we are always experiencing things in our lives. I recognize that we always have challenges in our life. I recognize that there are always storms in our life. But what I also recognize is that we are the peace in the storm. We are like the eye of a storm, the eye of a hurricane. Perfect calm, perfect peace, perfect ease. And so as we recognize that peace is always available, in this moment, in consciousness, we speak peace over the situations and circumstances over our lives. In this moment, in consciousness, I say, be still to the problems, to the circumstances, to the hurts, to the difficulties, to the disappointments, to the challenges that are taking place in our lives. I say, be still, because I recognize that peace is ever present, and I recognize that you are that peace, Mother, Father, God. And as I recognize that peace is always present, I recognize that these powerful souls, these God beings, create their lives. And I recognize that there is a deep, powerful, amazing power of choice that lives within them, and I call it to rise up now. No longer will we live by default. No longer will we live on automatic. No longer will we allow life to just happen to us, but we will begin to speak a word in confidence, knowing that our words will be clothed into form, just as you have spoken the words and life came into being, just as you have spoken the words and life came into being, just as you have spoken the word and the waters came into being, so we, as those that are created in your likeness and image, speak the word and allow our good to come into being. Because we recognize the truth that yes, God, you are good and only good. And as we are your children, as we are connected to you, as we are created in your likeness and image, so we shall create from good and only good. I am grateful for the ways in which we will witness in these beautiful souls' lives the transitions and the miracles and the answered prayers that come forth as these God beings begin to stand in their godliness, as these God beings begin to walk as their God selves and know that they have a power and are no longer victims of circumstances or victims of life or victims of the storms or victims of the winds. And we shall leave this place in celebration. Celebration of life itself, celebration of magnificence, celebration of glory and holiness that we are. I now release these words back to you in surrender and complete openness, knowing that you will bring it all forth easily and effortlessly and without delay. Together we lift up our voices and we say amen.